Welcome back to Jackson Squared. Yesterday, we talked about how to convert a fraction to a decimal and a fraction to a percentage. Today, we're going to be learning how to convert a decimal to a percentage and a decimal to a fraction. Let's jump right in. For a decimal to a percentage, it says move the decimal point 2 places to the right. A decimal to a percentage, we already know how to do this because it's just same as a fraction, right? Because we have to change the fraction to a decimal and then a decimal to a percentage. So this is the same. Move it 2 places to the right. We know that because multiplying a decimal number times 100 would move the decimal place 2 places to the right. So it's the same. And then you write the percentage sign. So let's just start with an example to refresh our memories. If I have 30 hundredths, I would take my decimal point and move it 2 places to the right, and this would be 30%. So I'm not going to waste you guys' time. I'm not going to waste your time. We're going to jump right in and practice. Here are your practice problems. Write these down, convert them to percentages, then come back and check your work. All right, so let's see how we did. The first one is 125 thousandths. You move your decimal 2 places, 1, 2. Your decimal will end up in between the 2 and the 5. So it would become 12.5%. 45 hundredths, 2 places, 1, 2. It will become 45%. Your 7 hundredths, 1, 2, it will become 7%. So make sure you look at those carefully. You're always moving that decimal place 2 places to the right. As I told you on yesterday, you're not trying to make a whole number. You're moving it 2 places to the right because if you multiply times 100, it will shift it over 2 places. Okay? So you can have a you can have a percentage with a decimal point in it, like 12.5%, and you can have just 7%, right? 7% of something. So make sure that you were careful with that and not trying to overcompensate only 2 places. Now let's look at converting a decimal to a fraction. Write the decimal over 100 if it has a hundredths place. Over 10 if it only a tenths place. Don't forget to simplify. So this is reminding us about decimal place value. Decimal place value. So in case you don't remember, I'm going to quickly jot down a little reminder. This is your decimal point. Behind your decimal point is the tenths. And then behind the tenths is the hundredths. In front of our decimal is the ones place, and then the tens place, and so forth. Remember, we read the decimal as and, okay? Whenever we read that, the decimal point, we say A-N-D. Okay, that's how you read it. 1 and 5 tenths, 1 and 50 hundredths. Okay? So tenths is a part of a whole, it's a fraction. Hundredths, sorry, I spelled that wrong. TH is hundredths is a part of a whole. It's a fraction, it's a crumb. Remember, we talked about those things. So this seems pretty easy. I'm going to look at the place value, and then wherever it falls, that's what I'm going to write it as. So I have some problems here. The first one is 36 hundredths. That's why reading the number properly helps you so much. So you write it just like you read it. 36 hundredths mean I'm going to write 36 over 100. That's exactly how I'm going to write it. 36 out of 100 because the 6 falls in the hundredths place. Okay? Then, of course, you always want to simplify your fraction. So 36 and 4, I already know the GCF is 4. If you don't know the GCF is 4, then you will take a pause, do your prime factorization tree, prime factorization to find your GCO. How many times will 4 go into 36? 9. How many times will 4 go into 100? 25. So 36 hundredths is the same as 9/25. Okay? 9/25. The next one is 7/10. That 7 is in the 10th place. So I'm going to write 7 out of 10. Write it just like you say it, just the same way I would say it and speak it. That is how you write it, 7/10. Well, 7 is prime. It has two factors, 1 and 7. So I know that I'm not going to be able to simplify this. It is already in simplest form. So the next one is 125 thousandths. Okay, I didn't put the thousandth place on my place value chart. I'm going to do that. While I'm doing that, go ahead and see if you can write that as a fraction. All right, we're done? Hopefully, yeah. Okay, so you write it like you said, 125 out of 1,000. 125 out of 1,000. So again, this would be one where you would have to definitely do some prime factorization, do some factor trees to figure out what the greatest common factor is. I've done my side work. I know that it's 125. Okay? 125, we're going to 125 one time. 125, we're going to 1,000 8 times. So 125 thousandths is the same as 1/8. That is from a decimal to a fraction. Okay, decimal to a fraction. So again, decimal to a percentage, you're going to move the decimal points 2 places to the right and add a percent sign. Decimal to a fraction, you're going to write it over 100 if the last digit is in the hundredths place. You're going to write over 10 if the last digit is in the tenths place. And then you're going to simplify if needed. So let's get in some more practice.